Hey, you are now listening to the Graceway podcast. Let's talk.
Hey everybody, welcome to Let's Talk episode 50. We're at episode 50 because of you. You made this an awesome time for us, and I want to make sure that you guys know we're taking a break. So we're going to take a little break here at episode 50. We're going to recalibrate and then come back at you with some new material, but we don't know when we're going to come back at you yet. So want to make sure you hit that like, subscribe, the follow button so that you get notified whenever we launch this thing back out. And of course, we're going to let you know ahead of time. But today I get to sit here with Pastor Tim, episode 50, talk about Amos. What a great way to
For obvious reasons.
to have a finale is the book of Amos, right? It's like, 8 chapters, and that dude had a hard job. I was wondering where you were going to go with this, right? Like I always do, right? Until I see your notes or I listen to you. I'm like, man, this guy, it's like, here's 6 chapters of bad news you get to go deliver to a bunch of people, and go and do it well, Amos.
Yeah, good job.
But I like what you did to pull it apart, and especially in your sermon on Sunday, you talked about there's a difference between a prophet and a prophetic word. I thought that was cool too, at least in first service. I think it was that you shared about, like, I've had people speak some prophetic words, which coming from the history of our church hasn't always been a thing. Maybe not as open, but there's a thing there. But as far as prophets, I've met some people here that thought they were prophets.
I
think it's kind of like the guys that drive around with the truck that says redneck on the windshield.
Right.
Like if you have to say you are, then
you might
not be.
I don't know anything about that, but
of course you don't. That's right. So I'm thinking about Amos, and when you read through that book, again, we're covering some short books here. So for people that haven't read their Bible, these are easier books to jump into. And one of the things that I saw in there is Amos negotiating with God.
Yeah, right.
And I think this is something, for me anyway, that I hear so many people like, God just is the puppet master with people on strings.
Yeah, right.
And immediately I started thinking through, no, like Moses negotiated with God about the golden calf.
Yep.
Repeatedly,
Yeah.
right? Abraham was Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah.
And God continued to work with him on it. And I just think he's not a God that is sitting there with every step marked out. There's a lot of freedom here. And he's a reasonable, loving, generous God, which of course you get into generosity. But
and that the pattern with all of those individuals is relationship. They had a relationship with God.
Exactly.
And really, whenever anybody says God's just up there somewhere, I understand why people feel that way, but what they're really saying is I don't have a relationship with God. Even if I'm a Christian, even if I go to church, they aren't in contact with, relationship with, to know, to have experienced God. Obviously, it's not him changing, but just being in relationship, conversation, transformation, all of those things. And so, Amos was a guy that, even though he's an odd fit for what God called him to do, you can see in his interaction with God that he had a relationship with God, wanted to obey God, even though he kind of felt overwhelmed with what God was wanting him to do. You get the sense that he was always going to do it. He just sort of needed to get his head around it. So,
Yeah, that's tough. And I think about, too, with relationship, one of the other ones was Mary. She asked Jesus to perform a miracle. He said, not yet, Mama.
No,
She said, please, do this. And he did.
And he did.
So anyway, I love that God shows us that.
He does.
In this. And even with someone like Amos, who was like, whoa, God, this is too much. Can we dial it back, please?
And it's an interest. I mean, he's a contemporary with Hosea, who gets another, you want me to do what?
Right.
Go marry a woman of the street, a hooker, and marry her, have babies with her, and it's a brutal call. Jonah, go to Nineveh, which would have been a brutal call for him. Obviously didn't handle it well, but so it's an interesting kind of slice of time in the covenant people of God, where God's calling these individuals in the office of a prophet to do these wild things, so that people can come to redemption and back into relationship.
And a lot of it has to do with, there's some sort of there's actions that come with our beliefs.
Yeah, that's right.
And God's sending people there to say, hey, stop.
Yeah.
Like, let's be done. And I put in my notes here, you had a line that says, for all followers of Jesus, our faith requires consideration of what God says our perspective and behavior ought to be.
Yeah, that's right. It's got to be both.
Yes. Yeah, you can have a belief system, but it's going to come out of action.
That's right. That's right.
You know,
Yeah, and we're in this time with lots of words and not so much action.
Yeah, in every direction.
In every direction. Yeah, and so what an incredible opportunity for the people of God to employ their beliefs in an actionable way.
Yeah.
To distinguish themselves, and more than that, God. And these are old topics. Justice is an old topic that is getting some more run because of some recent things that have occurred. Lots of people talking a lot about how to fix it, and what's really more about what's wrong than how to fix it.
That's right.
And I would love the church, but more than that, I would love this church to be, let's be conversant, but more than that, let's get elbow deep in this thing and serve and lead and advocate and be generous, and let's do it.
Belief has action.
That's right.
If I tell my kids I love you,
Yeah,
but they never see it, experience it, feel it, there's no action to support it,
That's right.
then
yeah.
it's empty words.
And that's essentially what God says to the Israelites through Amos is enough with all this church activity.
Yes.
Get busy on redemptive activity.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting paradigm because you and I both love the church, love this church, but love the church, and have experienced a lot of blessing from the church. And so it's an interesting thing to acknowledge. Religious doesn't always mean redemptive.
Yeah.
And we want people to come to church. We love coming to church, but that's a step. It's not the whole journey. And when God says, stop all the things I told you to do, it's just basically, stop with the sacrifices, stop with the singing, stop with the solemn assemblies.
Right.
Let justice roll down. I mean, it's a jackhammer of a statement. So
Yeah, and apropos for, I would say, where we're at.
Then and now.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we can probably every generation has said that, because
agreed.
it seems like the sky is falling.
Yeah.
But it rings true.
Yeah.
And I love the part about where you said, retribution and repair.
Yeah, right.
And I think that comes back to the beliefs have action associated with them, and they have behaviors associated with them. And I will say for Graceway, I hope the same would be true at other churches, but we have a pretty generous population here.
Yeah, we do.
I'm grateful that even through a pandemic, through low employment, through crazy gas prices and everything else right now, people continue to say, I'm putting God first.
Yeah.
And it allows us to do things here that I wish more churches could do.
Yeah.
I won't say that they don't want to. It's just they're not they don't have the capability to do that. And we've built a lot of partnerships and provided a lot of opportunity. And you even mentioned one of them, just about the human trafficking that we're able to get involved in.
Yeah. I mean, you're being gracious in that. Obviously, we don't know, but churches that want to figure out how to be really clear. So we keep our staffing low. We're debt free. We keep our our admin side low, and we try to keep a lot in ministry and missions, and so one of the things we were able to do is we have a couple that we partner with on the human trafficking side, Love Justice, and they do an incredible job.
Yeah, they do.
And they were visiting. I had a meeting with them, and we were able to write them a check to open a new post at one of the significant airports in North America that is a hub for human and sex trafficking. And so we were able to write them a check for $35,000. They didn't know it was coming. Really, I think only a handful of the board knew. We knew.
Right.
A couple of staff people. So that was a cool moment. In the last year, we've had Armenia fund, we've had a Ukraine fund, we've had about $100,000 pass through that. In a couple weeks, we're going to ask for a camp offering. Yeah. We are in a great neighborhood. Great in the sense of so many good people.
Yes.
A lot of history, some complicated history, but a transitioning neighborhood. And we have a lot of kids who come to this church that going to camp is prohibitive. And I grew up in a single parent home. I remember I worked at the church so that I could go to camp.
Right.
And so we do everything that we can on the operational side so that when the church gives, it just goes directly to a kid.
100%.
And 100% of it. And so, every year that I've been here, not to say that you guys didn't do this before, but we've raised between $30,000 and $50,000 for that. And that's literally just off of like 2 weeks in a row asking.
Right.
And so it's a pretty incredible thing for God's people to put activity to belief and send kids to camp and send money to countries that a lot of our folks have never been to and care enough to reach in their pocket for women and children that are being affected by trafficking, which is just a horrific issue right now. And all of these are issues of justice, right?
Right.
All of these are issues of justice. Being able to cross the bridge, fill the gap for a kid who otherwise wouldn't be able to go to camp. There's reasons the kid can't go to camp.
Right.
Complicated reasons, familial, societal. And so for the people of God to say, yeah, of course God has blessed me. We want to send you to camp because we believe God's going to do something. God's just and God's generous. So yeah, it's a incredible church, 79 years, just getting started. But it's important for people to understand when we're generous, it is many times in response to injustice that generosity occurs. So
Yeah, and we've taken a stance here. Like we don't have a food bank here. We don't have a homeless shelter here. We don't have a spot for people to come in off the streets. But we found partners in our 8 decades of ministry here inside Kansas City that are doing those things well.
Yeah.
And I don't know, we advertise that a lot. That's probably a good space to talk about.
Yeah.
Some of those, like I think about City Union Mission.
Absolutely.
Working with the homeless people. They've been doing that for like over 100 years, I think.
That's right.
And we have a great partnership with them. Veronica's Voice.
Yeah.
We have people here in our population at Graceway that came through Veronica's Voice, which helps women come out of life on the streets and prostitution and trafficking. There's just so many opportunities I think that we're connected to. There is. That I feel like people are trying to re-engage, like society, if you will. It's been a struggle the last 2 years. It was tough to take action. I think a lot of our, we'll just say Graceway, had a lot of beliefs, and it was hard to take action, which, I mean, that's probably another one to talk about too. Is like Unite in Crisis. We had people come out and feed the hungry and provide us food and money to be able to do that. Even Jackson County recognized what we were doing, wanted to partner with us because of how we're moving. And so I just think Graceway here is doing amazing things. And
and toward that, just, a lot of people toward it's hard to take action. It might be hard for you to take action, but there's typically great orgs, great individuals who are taking action. If you don't know what to do, just go help them. And, philosophically, that's what we do, right? Like, we have a very narrow business. We don't start schools. We don't, we don't build housing complexes. But lots of God-fearing, Bible-believing, justice, redemptive-oriented people are doing that in our city. And so what better way to represent the people of God than to affirm you're doing a work that's not our business, but we want to support you do that. And I think that's at the church level and individually. And so if you are somebody who's saying, man, I want to get involved, just know that Graceway has a lot of partnerships that if you say, I want to get involved in X, even if we don't feel like we have the expertise to do that, we know somebody who does. That's and we'd love to connect you. And believe that God's people, Graceway, we say we're a church for all people. And of course we want to be. But stylistically and culturally, not everybody's going to fit incredibly well at Graceway, as much as we might try. We're a certain kind of church doing a certain kind of ministry. And that's why a good ecclesiology, we're a church in, this spectrum of great churches in Kansas City. We're not the best. We're a church. We want to work with God's people across all lines and across all ministries. And that's good for the church, and it's good for our city.
Yeah, we partner with other churches in the metro because they've taken a hyper focus on something.
That's right.
they're the best in the metro at it. So why would we recreate the wheel?
And be not as good.
Right.
Right. Yeah. It ends up, sometimes churches get in this spot where they think they're the only ones who can do, not like, be great at whatever your gifting and your calling could make you be great at. Distinguish yourself. But you can't be.
You can't be all of it.
You can't be all of it. That's why, jack of all trades, master of none.
That's right.
There's a handful of things that Graceway is good at, wanting to be great at. Partner toward your weakness. Partner toward things that aren't in your calling, and that's a justice issue too.
Absolutely.
Right. Because there are people who come from a different place, and sometimes churches get a little myopic and a little homogenous and a little self-righteous, and reaching across things to establish unity and fellowship, that's a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're not trying to compete with each other. We're all on the same mission. I'm not trying to have a bigger whatever or better whatever unless we can do more together in this. That's what people have come to us. I can't tell you how often this happens. People are like, "We need a food bank." I'm like, "I'm so glad you're passionate about a food bank." We don't have
their
one
number.
Here. Yeah. Here's REAP.
Yeah, exactly.
The Raytown Emergency Assistance Program. This is who we partner with.
That's right. And they're killing it and are already so far ahead of us that any progress they make will either put them further ahead of us, and we can just come alongside them with affirmation and economics and help them get better.
Yes.
But again, toward this, I mean, I don't want to soapbox this too hard. You say we aren't in competition. You and I kind of chuckle, but it needs to be repeated. We aren't in competition.
Correct.
The church has got to get to an anti-competition space. Like, not only are we not in competition, we are against competition in the church. And stop being so particular about who you can partner with. They don't have to have your exact, doctrinal statement, your exact this, that, the other. If they're good at something, they love Jesus, they care about their city, give it to them, partner with them. We make our tribe so small and feel very kind of sanctimonious about it. And the only people that suffer are the people that could be benefiting from us encouraging and working together.
Right.
So let's go from this church little c to church big C in Kansas City.
Yes.
And put our best foot forward with the people that have calling and expertise in areas that we can just say, I don't know how to run a food bank. I don't know how to run an orphanage. I'm not called to that, but even if I have no idea how to do that.
Right.
So if somebody's doing it.
But we do know how to get into Syrian refugee camps in Iraq.
We do know how to do that. We do know how to do that.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, we have people from other churches join our mission trips.
Yeah, that's right.
Because those churches they're dumbfounded. They're like, you go where and do what?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, actually we do. And we have a hospital in Mexico.
Yeah, we have a hospital in the Yucatan that's self-sustaining, self-supporting, nonprofit. In order to get into the hospital, you have to come through a local church. I don't know how to do that. Our
missions director
Ricardo knows how to do that. So if you want to do those things, come our way, and the things you are doing, we want to come your way.
Right.
And we want to be open and humble and generous in our perspective, and believe that God uses different kinds of people, callings, and churches for his plan.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think about, too, just some of the other stuff that we have going on around the world. Even yesterday, I think because of Graceway's generosity, one of our missions partner had an issue yesterday.
Yeah.
They didn't make a request,
right,
but we just caught on to something.
Yeah.
And we're able to just send some money to meet a need.
Yeah, that's right.
Where they're reaching probably thousands of people.
Yeah, that's right.
Then I think we got an email yesterday also from one of our partners in another country that said, hey, I've evangelized here into these areas. There's 2 guys that are willing to pick up that torch.
Yep.
And if you spend, I think it was like $2,400.
$3,400.
$3,400.
Yeah.
They could reach, each of them could reach 10 more villages each.
Yeah, and already fruitful. And
Right.
This is another great principle, follow fruit. right? So sometimes people every week somebody comes to us with an idea of what could be.
Yes.
And if the only thing that I need, no. This is a guy that you're referencing who there's already fruit and
Long-time relationship.
And with some money, we could have potentially in God's kindness more fruit. And so, yeah, it's literally a couple motorcycles, and we'll probably do some stuff around clean water. But yeah, and the only reason we can say yes to that is because this church believes in justice-based generosity.
Right.
And so it really does all go back to God's people being active, and what you and I talked about last week with, the cultural center of the church having moved to the global south, but the economic center is still here.
That's right.
And so churches, and this is why I want to make the point, when you say, maybe they can, maybe they can't. They can, but we do have to reorg the way we view our money and our systems to be able to help God's people get a vision for. You do know that if you give what you won't miss to what God is doing in other places, there is fruit connected to that.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get any credit. We don't have any control. This isn't a competition.
Right.
We're just going to gladly, to a large degree, anonymously try to bless somebody because God's really blessed us. And believe that when we do, it's not only redemptive, but it's just, and it glorifies God. Yeah.
And one thing I don't want to miss here too is the opportunity. One, I think that church leaders get a bad rap because it seems like they're always asking for money.
Sure.
And I think we try not to do that here.
Sure.
We just rely on generosity, and then I think this is an opportunity to share about here's some of the things your generosity are doing.
Yeah.
But it's not just money. Here at Graceway, we ask you, if you go through Growth Track, to give of all your resources.
Yeah, that's right.
And probably our most valued resource is time.
Yeah.
And that's where I see our dream team coming in, and this is where small groups go and serve at REAP or Veronica's Voice or City Union Mission or Bishop Sullivan. And there's a very long list that we could just keep going here in the metro. And that's where we see action taking place also.
That's right.
It's not just getting up out of your seat to grab your wallet and send some money to something, but getting out of your seat and actually going and doing something and then bringing people along with you.
Yeah, that's right.
And really, we have Serve Day coming up here.
We do.
Later this month, where that's an opportunity for people to get up and go do something. We're trying to stay predominantly right here real close to church.
We are.
We're taking over all the Raytown parks.
That's right. Yeah.
Several schools.
Yeah.
City Union Mission.
Yeah.
REAP. There's even our neighbors right here next door. We're looking at doing some stuff with Temple Heights.
Yeah. And that's, I want to encourage people. A lot of us are finding it hard to get back into the rhythm of getting active, getting out. And, when the Bible says it's more blessed to give than to receive, that's with your time as well.
Right.
And so some of these Serve Day, small groups, outreach dream teams, some of these systems that we have, we want you to be a blessing for in and of itself.
Yeah.
But we also know that when you're trying to be a blessing to our neighbors at Temple Heights or to our community here in Raytown, that God blesses you. And we want both for people. But you're going to have to kind of take God at His word and get out of some of the habits and some of the norms that we've gotten to over the last couple years, where we're just a little stuck. And we don't need a full leap, but just a step toward serving, a step toward activity, a step toward the promises of God around those things. And God will meet you in those and bless you as you try to be a blessing to other people.
Yeah, and I did share with you earlier about, even in the military we saw this.
Yeah.
That people are just beat up over the last couple of years. And there was a time that we did some serious training, and I could just see and feel the morale. People come up because all of a sudden they're on mission.
Yeah.
They don't have time to sit and be mopey.
Yeah.
And they're actually doing something, giving back, and they're doing it around people that they enjoy.
Yeah, that's right. And we think I don't have the bandwidth or the time or the energy to do that. But what we don't understand is those things fill up those categories. Yes. And when you're operating in gratitude with generosity toward purpose, God in his kindness fills up some of those. Part of the reason that we're depleted is because and I say this with all due respect, we've just spent so much time focusing on on negativity, on uncertainty, on division, and on ourselves.
Yep.
And we don't think that focusing on self has a depleting effect, but the Bible says the opposite.
Right.
That if you want to get filled up, figure out your calling and purpose and take action around that. And when you do, God meets you in that in a supernatural way and fills you up in a way that we really haven't been experiencing because we've been stuck in our houses, separated from one another. And so just an encouragement around Serve Day or small groups or those kind of things. I understand why we are where we are, and there's no condemnation or judgment around that.
Sure.
But the only path toward refilling is toward others, and God will bless that.
Well, and that comes back to that's our mission.
That's our mission. That's right.
You know, God's told us go and do these things.
Yeah.
And there was Abraham Kuyper, I think, that you had
Yeah,
quoted.
Yeah.
It says the church's job is to make disciples rather than change society. And
Yeah.
I think if we tell people we love them,
Yeah.
we have to have action behind that.
Yeah.
And so if we are going to make disciples,
Yeah.
making disciples will change society.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of, so Abraham Kuyper is, he's with Jesus now. But sometimes we, I don't know how much time we have, so just real quick here, okay?
We're going to episode 51.
That's right. Sometimes you'll hear people say, like, we want to change the world one person at a time. And there's a book by James Davison Hunter called To Change the World, where he basically says that doesn't work. It hasn't worked.
Right.
Institutions do have to change. So how we try to approach it here is we make disciples of people who take justice and kindness and grace and truth with them into those institutions. So we want to think systemically and institutionally. It really is the only way to change this society. But we are also hearing a lot of, if the church doesn't do, then America's going to whatever. ... And that is not a biblical concept, I don't think. No. I think that God calls us to make disciples, to bless the community that we're a part of. But the way that the church has sought to influence our country is politically.
Right.
And that also does not work. There is no historical precedent around that. This is what works, and this times scale, times intent, times generosity and justice and equality and advocacy at the institutional level that has to begin at the individual level. And right now, I'm praying, begging the church to come off of these political pursuits. It is not our team. Not only theologically is it not defensible, ideologically it's not defensible, and pragmatically it's not working. It's not working. We're losing. Let's try a different way. And we have midterm elections coming up, and then God help us, another presidential election. Let's try different things and be a blessing locally. Let's stop worrying about DC, worry about KC for Graceway. And this is where we're called. And in God's kindness, God's going to allow us to grow as disciples, us to make disciples as a church, and whatever effect that has on society, we'll be grateful for that as well.
Yeah, I really think if we took the time we're spending on worrying and social media and watching and all the stuff, and if we do what God asks us to do, and we put all that energy into those things, then we as people would change.
That's right.
Which would change our church, which then our community, our state, our nation. It spreads out, and so that is scalable, and that is a proven model.
Yeah, and exciting to think about. But we're going to have to come off of some of these other pursuits, because as simple as God's promises are, they are all encompassing. Mm-hmm. You don't take fragments of what God says. You have to go all in on what God says. And when you go all in on what God says, you get what God promises. But when you give God, I'll give you a little bit, but no, God wants it all. And so we want to be people who say, okay, God, this is what you say. This is what's true. We want to orient ourselves toward that. And then whatever you see fit to provide us in that work is good.
Yeah, and I think about we have people that don't go to Graceway, don't live in Kansas City, that
Sure.
watch and listen
Yeah.
to this. And I would say to them, like, get involved in your community.
That's
get involved in your church.
That's
like,
right.
You don't have to send your money here. You don't have to give your time here. We're not trying to do that. We're trying to
Yeah.
change the world through the ways that God's given us. So
Yeah, PJ and I talked about this in episode 46 or whatever. During COVID, a lot of people started watching us, and we're grateful and humbled.
absolutely.
Man. Like, that's a wild thing to get an email from somebody in another country or another state.
Right.
And so thank you. And find a local church. We aren't your local church.
That's right.
Episode 50, we are not your local church. And what I mean by that is we cannot make good on the promises of membership here to you if you're in New Mexico or Washington or Malaysia. Or we can't.
Right.
And you can't experience the benefit of being in this local church if you aren't local. And so again, maybe this is a good way to end. Man, thanks for watching us for 50 episodes. We're going to come back in a couple months and try to be even better. But in the meantime, if you need help finding a local church, please tell us. We know churches all over the world.
Yes.
And we want you to be in a local church. We want you to be using your gifts and your calling in that local church to be a part of making disciples in that community for God's glory and the blessing of that community.
Yeah, and to that end, we don't compete with it. Like, we're here to help you. If you're
That's
in another church somewhere, we open source everything that we have.
Everything,
We
yeah.
literally, I've downloaded, sent, emailed, Dropbox, whatever stuff that people say, hey, how are you doing this? Here's everything that we're doing, and then we'll try and walk alongside you to help you. So if you're at a church and you say, I want to do what you guys are doing,
Yeah, and just when you make it better than we're doing, can you let us know?
please,
So we
yes. Yeah, and we're constantly looking at how to make things
Always,
better
yeah.
and have a lot of help. And we've had churches do the same for us.
Yes, we have. Grateful.
Yeah, that's how we got an internship program.
That's exactly right.
Or in a residency. Like, we
Yeah.
just go down the list.
Yeah, that's
like,
right.
we're not
That's right.
proprietary. We just want to do great things.
We just- yeah,
if we
that's
do that with you, then that's what we want to do.
Okay.
So, any final words for episode 50, Pastor Tim?
Thanks for watching. See you soon.
All right, there you go. We love you. We'll be back soon.
Thanks for tuning into the Graceway experience. Hope we can talk again sometime.